just picture yourself in a, you've been walking for 3 days or 5 days or even longer, and it's raining every day and you've got this down sleeping bag and it's slowly absorbing the moisture and losing its loft. And then, you're in a tent and you're in your synthetic, everything, your clothing, and you're in this tent zipped up and it's raining and all night long and you're sitting there and it's a little too warm. You start to sweat and then you're, it can get miserable. And I mean, we've had many customers that actually went after they had that kind of experience. They went online and looked up if there was a wool sleeping bag.
I'm Meg Carney, an outdoor and environmental journalist, and this is the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast. Thank you for joining us so that together we can create a better outdoor space as we recreate. For decades, the outdoor industry has celebrated innovation primarily through synthetic textiles for lighter, stronger, more technical fabrics, all made from petroleum-based materials. But as we grapple with the environmental costs of producing as many synthetic products as we have, is there a shift underway? Fabrics like wool, waxed cotton, hemp, and other natural materials could be making a comeback, but not as a nostalgic throwback. As brands and individuals innovate with them, they're proving that they can be high-performing and sustainable alternatives to synthetic fabrics. One of the people leading that charge is Patrick Clark, founder of Lucky Sheep, and author of the book A Rewilder's Guide to Outdoor Adventure. Patrick has developed a full backpacking kit made from almost entirely natural fibers, with a base weight of just 20 pounds. From a lightweight wool sleeping bag to waxed canvas backpacks, his designs challenge the idea that performance has to come at the cost of sustainability. So thank you for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast today. I know that this has been a long time coming, so I'm excited to finally tackle this conversation. But before we jump into things, I will ask my classic question, which actually I haven't asked in a while, and I don't know why, but I want to know how you got interested in outdoor recreation as a part of your life and how it relates to your current life status.
I grew up in Western North Carolina in the mountains, in a little town called Cullowhee, North Carolina. And so I was like, my first experience of life was the forest and the creeks. And I grew up, walking barefoot on old Cherokee paths and behind my house, which is a mountain. And so that, it never left me. I was just always, that felt like home, being in nature. And so that's how I got interested in outdoor recreation. And then how it fits into my life now. I went on to become a outdoor professional. I majored in outdoor recreation. And at one point in the 90s, I edited a outdoor magazine called Cocopelli Notes. And that was a lot of delving into different people's adventures and experiences with gear and things like that. And, now my main goal is to create the perfect hiking and camping, backpacking experience that feels, I'm just passionate about designing gear and thinking through all the nuances of how the outdoor adventure works and how it can be improved.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how you got there, because you work in textiles now, or at least in designing how outdoor gear and apparel would work in more technical settings. So how did you kind of get to that point? You said that you edited a magazine for a while. What was kind of the general trajectory?
Well, I went throughout my life, I went through, I'm kind of old now. I've been through decades of a couple of generations of watching gear evolve and stuff. And so, I went through the phase in the 90s when people were really, the synthetic was just really catching on. And as it was being invented, they were inventing new synthetic fabrics and combinations of things. And so, I went around along the route, like everyone else, of adopting the newest technology and gear. And and in the 90s, it was all get rid of your wool and your cotton, and everything was like coming shiny and new. But there was a point in the 90s when I walked into a rummage store, and I bought a wool sweater that I hadn't had. Like at that point, I hadn't had any wool or really any natural fiber at all, and I don't think in my wardrobe. And I bought this wool sweater, and when I put it on, I just felt something different. That it felt warmer, and kind of like it was more like I felt more. I didn't have the words at the time, but I just felt better, kind of fuzzy. And so that sent me on a quest to like try to figure out like why it was like that, and why did that feel different, and so
Okay, so it seems kind of like an organic transition. You tried the wool sweater and you noticed the differences between that and the synthetic apparel that you owned. And so was that kind of the catalyst? And then is that what led you to want to have your own development in textiles and your own company, or how did that happen?
Okay. Well, ultimately, yes, it was that, but it was the process of a really, really long, like 15 years, I think, of experimenting more with developing. Actually, what it started with was the finding out about organic fabric, and I invented a few things as I was working in a yoga company, and I helped to kind of like there was a revival where people were discovering natural fibers, and there was a real push for like anti-plastic, and all of a sudden, like, there was a awareness growing around like the need to like go back to natural fibers, not in the outdoor industry, but in other places, and just in your house. And so non-toxic and organic and natural fiber, that was catching on. So, in my house, I was like, okay, get rid of that, clutter clearing and minimalism, and so first you start with like, how can I replace the things that are made of plastic and synthetic and get a natural thing? And that is a pretty tough thing. I mean, that takes a process. And so I kept doing that until like everything in my house was almost pretty much organic and non-toxic and natural, and wasn't off gassing. I had wooden floors and things like that. But then it was like my outdoor gear was still synthetic, and it just seemed like there was something like wrong. Like, why did outdoor gear have to be synthetic? It just hit me all of a sudden, and I started thinking about it, and then that led to like, well, maybe it doesn't. Like, why don't I try something a little different? And from there, I did like play around with some fabric, because at that point I had experience with a little bit of fabric, knowing how fabric worked and things. And so I experimented with like trying to find some fabric that I could even experiment with, some wool. And I like made a really makeshift sleeping bag, and I went outside and tried it out, and it actually worked. And I mean, it wasn't really all that heavy. And so that's pretty much how I got into like the gear. That was the beginning of exploring natural fiber outdoor gear.
And now it's been a while that you have integrated that into your day-to-day lifestyle, but also how you recreate outdoors. So how does your sort of like gear setup and backpacking setup look different than like a conventional setup? Like, what did you focus on replacing first, and then how did that evolve?
It did. It went one piece at a time. Like, first there was the sweater and the insulation layer. And so that wasn't too hard because I was like, sweaters are, and at that time, like you couldn't find a new one hardly, but you could find them in the rummage store. So, the insulation layer was the first thing, and then it had to get a wool base layer, because why wear polypropylene when you got wool on the second layer? So there were a few organic companies making wool jersey base layers. So I was able to get base layer, insulation layer, and then the shell layer was the part that took the very last thing. It took me for a long time, like 10 years, to figure out how to get away from a Gore-Tex parka. And eventually I did do that after experimenting with the process. Was this, like, first it was like a windbreaker. Like I got a oversized, tightly woven cotton shirt from the rummage store. And I kind of altered it. I put a zipper on it and a hood on it. And I made like a makeshift, like, kind of windbreaker. And I mean, of course, I could only wear it as a windbreaker, not a rain thing. But still, it was the beginning of something, and it worked in sometimes, like on a day hike. But then from there, I started experimenting with using beeswax and the old fashioned formula of making oilcloth. And so it's like, maybe, just maybe this will work. And so I started playing around with that and studying that, how to make it. And so then I made that, and it didn't really work perfectly, but then I kept working on it for a few more years, and now it works perfectly. So now, so that's how the parka evolved. And then let's see, the tent I started out with I actually made a canvas tent, and I actually used it backpacking some, but then it just doesn't work because it does collect water. And when it collects water, it gets super heavy. And so I ditched that, and I went with sil nylon. So my I don't have my 100%. I'm not like a purist, like 100% natural, but I do use sil nylon, which I really like it because it doesn't have like toxic off gassing. And so but I keep an open air. I keep my tent open air because I found out, like, thanks to Ray Jardine, who some of you probably know, that if the air flows through the tent, then it doesn't collect moisture from your body, from your breathing. And then so there's a theory, and it's kind of maybe debatable, but that the air flowing through keeps you warmer than if you seal it in, and it collects your moisture from your body and your air, insensible perspiration. So that's how my tent, my sleeping bag, my base layer, my shell, my insulation layer, all of that, it kept going in that direction of going as natural as I could. And then my backpack, like, I designed a backpack that I was really just designing the backpack because I just like to make my own things and customize it. And so I made a canvas backpack, and then I added the beeswax idea to it. And so now, and the advantage of that is that you can sometimes pull it over your legs and create like an extra layer of protection. So it's like double duty, not just a backpack. And because it's breathable, you can do that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a good idea. So I kept right now my gear, the only thing that's left synthetic is my tent is synthetic, and my ground sheet is synthetic, and my stuff sacks, or they're all sil nylon. All of that is sil nylon.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though, that when we talk about this a lot on the show, especially when we're talking about products, is that it can be really overwhelming if you just try to be a purist and go 100% in, but it's better to like make modifications gradually and then try and change things that work for you and your setup. And I think one thing that's interesting, like with the canvas tent, is that a lot of people or a lot of brands want to shift to ultralight. They want to use synthetics for the performance, but also the weight factor. So Was that a consideration at all for you in terms of backpacking? How much your gear would weigh and also how it would perform in comparison to a synthetic?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because it comes down to like that weight. It is seriously, you definitely have to make it lightweight. Otherwise it wouldn't be any fun walking. So I did. And that was like the big challenge. The big challenge was like finding the right combination of fabrics and the right fabric, and experimenting with different fabrics, different weaves, different weights, and to get the things that like together they work and they bring the weight down. And so it was definitely but I did achieve that, because like lightweight backpacking, the definition is like around 20. If it's 20 pounds or less, like your base weight, then that's kind of like where lightweight backpacking is the limit. And so that was my ultimate challenge, was to get my whole gear set so that it did reflect lightweight backpacking principles. And I was able to do that. Like my current gear set is about 20 pounds base weight, and it works really well. And so then we got the perform. So that's the weight side of it, and the performance side of it is like, well, so like let's say you had 15 pounds base weight. Okay, well you win on the weight side, but what about you compromise on the performance side? So like if the conversation is there's only one factor and it is only weight, that's not such a good idea, because you could die. I mean, your gear, literally your life could depend on your gear working in the different conditions that you find yourself in. So and not just that as far as survival, but I mean, like, do we go out into nature, we want to have like kind of a sensuous experience. I mean, that's why we're going out. Not everyone, but a lot of us, that's why we're going out there. We want to breathe the fresh air and to sleep good and to just feel good all around and be comfortable, and be able to kind of challenge our physical abilities and all the different harsh conditions and things like that. So I felt like that, say that 5 pounds of difference. And then, of course, you can go lower than that. Like now the ultralights are going so low. But the thing is, it will inevitably, like, I would challenge anyone who's like really into ultralight. And by the way, I'm not judging anyone. Like, if that works for you, no problem at all. Go for it, But I'm just saying, like, just picture yourself in you've been walking for 3 days or 5 days or even longer, and it's raining every day, and you've got this down sleeping bag, and it's slowly absorbing the moisture and losing its loft. And then, you're in a tent, and you're in your synthetic everything, your clothing, and you're in this tent zipped up, and it's raining and all night long, and you're sitting there, and it's a little too warm. You start to sweat, and then you're, I mean, it can get miserable. And I mean, we've had many customers that actually went, after they had that kind of experience, they went online and looked up if there was a wool sleeping bag. So it does happen. It can happen. Just yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think textiles, they're such a big part of the outdoor gear like process and the things that we need and that we use in terms of our apparel, our sleep gear, the tent, backpack, etc. And you mentioned that when you were kind of starting out into outdoor recreation, it was very much in a natural fiber state, or maybe even before that. But then we started to transition into synthetics when they were being developed. And that was like new and exciting. And everyone wanted to be using them. But now I feel like we're seeing a transition away from synthetics again, which is very positive. It's very slow, but it is positive. So why do you think that the synthetics kind of overtook the natural fibers? What made natural fibers go out of style? Because in my experience, sometimes my natural fiber apparel is performing much better than my synthetics anyway.
I think, first off, like when you see candy, you want it, it tastes good. But then, like, it doesn't really necessarily give you a whole lot after that first like sensation. So, I think part of it is that, it was exciting. It was like, oh my God, I could get my gear so light. And so people just kind of went in that direction, like, oh my God, like this is going to be great. But then it was like, then you take a second look after, it gets all the tests in the field and everything, and you rethink it and stuff. So it's partly that it is natural for us to like something new that looks good, and we don't know for sure yet. But another of it is really that the textile industry pushed it, and they actually pushed it with a lot of I mean, some of it I don't know that it's like necessarily evil what they did, but actually some of it is, because like think of DuPont with the PFOS and Forever Chemicals, and where they did push lies and didn't let us know the toxicity of the gear that we were using. So, part of it was that, and part of it was just natural marketing where you push whatever you're trying to sell and point out the advantages, don't point out the disadvantages, so between the marketing and the price tag, where, well, I don't know, the pricing is a whole different issue because it kind of goes up and down based on various factors. But like now the natural fibers are the thing that's really expensive. I think when it was first starting, it was the synthetic things that were the expensive thing on market.
Yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about price because I think one thing that often deters people from wanting to invest in things like wool or even hemp in some situations, alpaca, whatever it is, the type of natural fiber that you're looking into. My dog just jumped off the bed. Hold on. Lay down. Okay. um, Price is a big deterrent for that. And so then they end up, because maybe they can't afford it, or they just don't want to spend that much money on something that they don't think they're going to use that often. They end up going with a synthetic. So do you want to talk a little bit about how the prices have kind of evolved, and then also maybe reframing our mindset around how we're investing in those things?
So availability of the supply chain is kind of like probably the biggest factor driving pricing. And since the world went all, so much ubiquitously synthetic, there's like this huge supply of very cheap raw material and a supply chain that's like actually kind of extremely exploitive of people and of the land and the water and the air and the soil, extremely extracting and destroying like everything in its path. When you come to a level of exploitation like that, you're not paying the true price of of the product. So I mean, if we could think about okay, so and then the whole economy is set up around this destructive system, so it is hard to break out of that because we're all connected to the same economic system. And so to break out of that, I mean, you have to make a personal sacrifice you have to really value what it is, that it's sustainable, and it's going to help your health, and it represents your values, and you feel good about it. And it has to have some kind of personal motivation to pay more for that thing that it's going to be out of reach maybe for some people. So that is, it's like that it's the supply chain. And now wool is really scarce in some ways because the market hasn't been demanding it. So if the market starts demanding it, then it's going to grow, and there's going to be more sheep, and there's going to be more, it's going to get cheaper. And so that's like the main thing about that. And then when it reflects to like, why I'm buying this thing that I can afford it. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, sometimes like we actually kind of have anger towards, like, if something is high priced, we think, well, someone's ripping me off or something, a knee jerk reaction. And, it's not that. I can assure you that it is not that. It is those prices are definitely reflective of how much it costs to make that product, and in an ethical way, ethical and fair trade, and a living wage, and low environmental impact, all of there's a price for that. So yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like with the rise of synthetics in like the 80s and 90s and outdoor apparel and just products in general, it was really aligning with fast fashion. So, how do you think our general consumerist mindset in relation to fast fashion has also integrated the outdoor industry?
Good question. Because the outdoor, when you go outdoors, I mean, you still want to look good. There's a huge thing about fashion in outdoor clothing and outdoor gear, even gear, because gear is like part of your image. And so there became an aesthetic where people wanted it to look modern. And modern means like rounded corners and like space age looking, like that's modern. Well, but that's kind of a contradiction. You're going to nature, but you want to look space age. I mean, like, if you think about it, that might just simply start changing the whole, value system around, like, should it look space age or should it look a little more like it fits in with nature? I mean, like, even the tents and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but um, I'm just saying that there is a huge fashion element. In fact, that might be driving more of consumer activity and for outdoor gear than anything, is that it's a fashion statement. I got the best brand and the latest, the greatest, and I'm on top of it. You want to make that statement when you're walking by people on the trail. I just think we should start, this dialogue about that natural materials really fit in with outdoor gear and look great. They look amazing. They make you look really nice when you're out there and camping and hiking, and it actually. Oh, another thing about this fashion thing, it's kind of already going that way. The synthetic brands are actually they're trying to make the fabric look natural. And so there's been some kind of a shift where they want it to look natural. Well, now that is a real cop out to me. Like, I mean, philosophically, if you want it to look natural, it means you're saying you value natural fibers, and go out and get a natural thing.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I find like the discussion around textiles and like moving to a more circular economy in the outdoor apparel industry or gear industry in general to be really interesting and sometimes misleading, because oftentimes like larger brands, like even brands like Patagonia and stuff, they really lean into the recycled polyester. Like they're using recycled polyester, so it's closing the loop, and in some ways it is. But then you still have the fact that it is petroleum-based material, so it derives from fossil fuels, and then it also is shedding microplastics. So, like, how is it really fitting into being a natural part of the environment? And like, is it also polluting when we're going out into these places? It's not really a question. It was more like a statement. So do you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh yeah. No, that's a very good point. And the fact that, like, recycled only constitute a very small fraction of the plastic that we use, and it's usually combined. It's with other new virgin petroleum. Well, yeah, and the fact that, like, just continuing to use plastic in any form, it's not really going to be the answer to anything. I mean, the textile industry is one of the biggest polluters on the planet, and it's only gotten that way in the past 50 years due to synthetic the introduction of synthetic, the chemicals used for all the different phases of processing and dyeing and things. We're exposing our bodies to it. Even if it's recycled, it's still got the chemicals. We're exposing our bodies to it. The microplastics. Even if it was 100% recycled, it's still got most of the same environmental problems that are already there.
Yeah, and so I guess what is your vision looking forward then? I feel like we're already seeing a push in the industry to be more sustainable and some brands moving more towards natural fibers, other smaller brands kind of rising up and leading the charge in terms of like all of our things are naturally or natural fibers. So what do you envision the industry to look like in like 10 years? Will we transition away from synthetics or are we kind of stuck in that realm?
I think that it's inevitable that we will be going in the direction of natural fibers and awareness around the harmful effects of the synthetic outdoor gear. And the reason why is because how can it not? I mean, it's going that in every other industry where this awareness is rising. And how could the outdoor industry continue to shield itself from that awareness? It's like the elephant in the closet, honestly. It's just something that it's not pretty to look at. It is hard to kind of let go of our gear and our value system and our sort of like, mindset around how gear should be. But I think it's inevitable. And another thing is like, like most people, like this is where we're at. We're at the very beginning stages. I mean, I'm asking your audience to like be one of those change makers, be the change that you want to see. And the very few people are on the cutting edge of any new idea. And this is a new idea. And so like, I think it's 3% of the population will actually be open to a new idea, period. So, and this is very new because it's so new that, that like most people have no idea that there is anything available other than synthetic. Is that like most of my customers are like, oh, is there a wool sleeping bag anywhere in the world, and stuff like that. So it's that news. So I think that that it will these brands, as this awareness comes out, will start to introduce the more natural fiber gear, and that's my hope and wish. And also the fact that my book exposes all of this information in detail, that the A Rewilder's Guide to Outdoor Adventure. And so I think that the awareness is going to happen.
Yeah, I think that it is growing and more people are becoming aware, especially with the impacts of the climate crisis really starting to integrate into everyone's lives. It's something that we can't really not face anymore. So you mentioned that, I mean, you want to see more change makers rise up, but what can individuals be doing? Because a lot of the responsibility is on the brands to manufacture using more ethical practices and natural fibers. But while we're in the state that we are right now, what can the average outdoor recreationalist do to make a change?
I think that one thing is to like really question the brands, like write to them and ask them like where did the feathers come from? Are they certified friendly, bird friendly? And even so, though, that only goes so far, because they'll almost always, say everything is completely certified and tracked, and it's not. It's a mess with the fiber. The whole fiber industry is tracking it, and truth and disclosure and transparency is like one of the darkest industries right now. There is just no transparency in it, but continue to ask the companies, and that way they'll know that there's pressure on them to get better and make it work, make it right. And then another thing is, like for your own for your own, what you use, like, to, buy it used, or, if you need to buy it used as opposed to new. There's gear swap places, and as far as and also like adopting new natural fiber, new sustainably made gear, like doing it like one step at a time. Like if it takes like a year to save up to buy one piece of gear, then just, one step at a time. Like, I mean, it took me years to get the gear set that I have now. So yeah, you can only do what you can do.
And if listeners want to learn more about your journey, I know they can find that in the book. What's the best place to find that? And also, if they want to check out, is it the only wool sleeping bag available? It's the only one that I've really found, but perhaps there's others. Yeah, where can they learn more about your products?
It is. It's the only packable wool sleeping bag. There are other sleeping bags that are not made and will not fit in your backpack. But yeah, it is. So where can they find out more? You can go to my YouTube channel, which is you got the link. My YouTube channel, and Rewilder's Guide. That's what it's called, and also the website lucky-sheep.com is the website, and you can buy the book there, and you can read the blog and find out more about the products and things like that.
Awesome. I'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes so people can find that very easily. But with that, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your story and hopefully introducing a few new people to a natural fiber sleeping bag.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.